Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 305. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about beaches, art museums, and pirates as we go to Tampa Bay, Florida.
Got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Before we get into this week's interview, I do have 4 news stories for you. The first 2 are related. There are phishing scams going on the internet around travel. And if you're not sure what a phishing scam is, that email that you get that claims to be your bank but isn't, that's just somebody looking for your password, is called a phishing scam. And that's with a PH instead of an F. And there's one that has fooled a few people that's gone out recently that claims to be from Delta Airlines, recommending you change your SkyMiles account PIN immediately and monitor your account for misuse. As you log in, you're giving them your password. So always be careful when you're looking at those emails that they come from an email that is the company they're claiming to be, and that the URLs that they send you to also are the company that they claim to be. And then a deal that sounded too good to be true for Southwest was too good to be true. People who were told they would get 2 free tickets merely for sharing a promotional link on their Facebook page were just giving away personal information to a scammer. A European announcement that's going to have some ramifications worldwide is that Europe has banned the X-ray body scanners over cancer worries. There's no indication yet that other countries will follow suit, but that's a story to follow. And then in the most bizarre story, apparently passengers on a charter jet were stranded in Vienna for 6 hours until the passengers themselves went to their ATM accounts and scrounged up the money for gas. For links to all 4 of those stories, check out the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Shannon Martin, who is coming to us from toohootravel.com and come to talk to us about Tampa, Florida. Shannon, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Now, I normally ask someone why they were visiting Tampa, but you live in the Tampa area.
I do. I've been here almost 10 years.
And why do you live in the Tampa area?
It is paradise. It's definitely a beautiful area to live. I grew up going more to the east coast of Florida and didn't really know this area as much. Came down here once on a spring break and then another time to visit cousins that had moved down here and just fell in love with the beauty of the area.
And you say the East Coast, it seems to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the tourists visit Miami and Orlando and don't really see the rest of Florida.
Definitely. Yeah. And I was a East Coaster, Northeast Coaster, grew up in Maryland, and we all pretty much went to the East Coast of Florida for vacation. So, I mean, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and then everybody makes their trip to Disney. So the West Coast is a little less explored. More of the Midwestern tourists tend to come here and tend to be the people that come down for the winters and that kind of thing, but definitely less well known.
Okay. And why should someone go to the West Coast of Florida?
Well, I think if you're thinking about a beach vacation in Florida, I would argue that this is probably one of the most beautiful areas in Florida. I mean, consistently, Dr. Beach and all of the beach experts rate some of the beaches here as the top, sometimes even in the world. So we have a number of state parks in the area that are the beaches and some really gorgeous areas. And then beyond the beach, it's surprisingly very diverse in terms of what there is to offer here. Everything from, it's a big sports town, everything from outdoor activities to, professional sports, and lots of festivals, and also a pretty happening arts scene, which I think would surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I certainly don't think of Tampa that way. I'm also surprised when you say Dr. Beach, whose work I'm not familiar with. I didn't even realize one could get a doctorate in beaches, so that's intriguing as well. But so what kind of itinerary would you recommend? Should we stay in Tampa? Is there someplace else we should go first?
Yeah, I would recommend, well, one thing, first of all, is it is a decent combo with Orlando. So if someone was doing a Disney trip, we're only about an hour or so away. So that's one thing for people to consider tagging it on to a trip to Orlando.
Okay. And how would you differentiate? Let's say East Coast, West Coast. So I go to the East Coast when I'm going down for spring break. I certainly think of that scene or the party scene in Miami. Who would be more attracted to the West Coast?
I'd say, I mean, there's a lot of fun, but it's not quite that partying type scene. But I would say people that enjoy the outdoor activities, the beach, and then, we'll talk a little bit about some of the arts and things, but just there's a real variety. And it's also very family friendly. So it would make a nice combo for that family that's going to Orlando to do Disney. You want some downtime after running crazy through the theme parks. Great beaches to come over and spend a little more downtime, and very family oriented.
Okay, excellent. And then itinerary, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I would actually not recommend, nothing against Tampa, but I wouldn't recommend probably staying in the city of Tampa. There are some hotels over there, and that would be a possibility. But the beaches are so great. Even if you're not going to spend a lot of time laying out on the beach, I would recommend staying there just for the view, the sunsets, the activities. So the little area across the bay from Tampa is Pinellas County, and that's where you'll find the beaches ranging from Clearwater Beach is probably the most familiar and commonly known, all the way down to St. Pete Beach. So there's just kind of the full lineup of beachfront hotels and nice places to stay. So that I kind of recommend picking one of those areas, and you can really probably pick an area to stay, at a hotel, and everything's within half an hour. So it would be really easy to just kind of park yourself in one place and then see a lot of the area.
Okay. And then you say water activities. I'm picturing that because we're on the Gulf side, it's a little more sheltered and we're not seeing like big surfing waves, but it'd be more for body surfing or playing in the water.
Definitely. Okay. And the only time you're going to see waves is going to be during hurricane season, and then you'll need to stay out of the water. So, but yeah, it's definitely great there's a lot of kayaking. Like I said, a lot of park areas where you can kayak, and body surfing, and the boarding now that's popular, the paddle boarding.
Mm-hmm. The stand-up paddle boarding that came from Hawaii.
Yep, exactly. You'll see that a lot now. And boating is very popular because it is a really pleasant place to boat. So there's quite a bit of boating as well.
And when you say boating, are there places that you go to, or are there things further offshore, or are you fishing, or what is going on?
A little bit of everything. A
Okay.
lot of people have boats. A lot of people go out on the boats. One of the things that the locals do a lot is take the boats out, meet up on the holiday weekends, and there's a number of kind of sandbar islands where people will all go and kind of bring their picnics and go out and have a day. There are also a number of recreational options for people to go out on, fishing tours, but also there's some fun, cheesy kind of tourist things, which I've actually experienced one recently as a person that lived here and found it was quite fun. There's a big pirate ship that goes out on Clearwater Beach and they entertain the kids and they go out and it's during the sunset, so it's pretty, but it kind of has a cheesy theme, but at the same time, it's a lot of fun.
Okay. And when we've had too much sun, what do you recommend we do?
Oh, there's plenty to do
Okay.
when you've had too much sun. One of the things I mentioned, the art scene, and I think one of the things that would surprise a lot of people as a person who likes to travel to Spain also, when I'm not here at home, I was pleasantly surprised when I moved to the area to find out we have the Salvador Dali Museum down in St. Petersburg. It's actually been recently redone and the new building opened up about a year or two ago, I guess. So it's got beautiful architecture now and it now can fit the entire collection. They used to have to rotate out some of the collection, but it's a world-class museum. I believe it's bigger than the collection in the museum that they do have in Spain in his home area.
Huh.
And the building itself is worth seeing.
And I assume that's just because of a private collector. That's the connection to St. Petersburg?
Yeah, interestingly, it was a couple of private collectors, a couple, who befriended Dali when he was here in the States, and they actually lived in the Midwest, and for quite a while had the collection in their home and had it, as a museum that people could come to see, but then they began searching for a more realistic place for people to be able to come visit, and really it was, I guess, credit to some St. Petersburg business people who kind of put in a bid, as you would for a Olympic event or a sports team or whatever, to show them that this was a good area and what they would do to build the building for it and that kind of thing. And so thus it came to St. Petersburg, and so it's a great attraction for people.
Interesting. And you mentioned an art scene, so I'm assuming there's more than just one museum that you have in mind.
Yeah, there is. In downtown St. Petersburg, along with the Dali Museum, there is also, just recently again, the Dale Chihuly, who's the glass artist from the Seattle area.
His work.
Yeah, he's opened a collection here. And again, I think, you can see a lot of his work in hotels and different places, but again, it's kind of the one place you can go, I think, with a permanent exhibit. He also has traveling exhibits a lot and see his work there on display.
Yeah, no, I've seen his work both at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, where a lot of people have seen the ceiling that he did, as well as one of the traveling exhibits that I saw at the Phoenix Botanical Gardens. The Desert Botanical Garden. Yeah. Just very interesting work.
Yeah, we actually saw one of the outdoor exhibits at a botanical gardens in Tennessee, and it was really neat. But the museum is great. I don't remember the exact admission price. I felt it was a little bit on the high end it's not a huge museum, but it's such a unique experience, and it's something that I think kind of appeals to, you don't necessarily have to be a big arts buff. It's just so visually stunning that it's very interesting. And then if you're doing the downtown St. Petersburg area, they also have a fine arts museum, which has a permanent collection, but also has traveling collections. And then there's a number of galleries and also boutique stores and restaurants. So that's just a nice place to spend a day and can be indoors in the air conditioning a lot, but then also get out. There's a beautiful waterfront, a pier with some touristy things to do down there, and just a really fun place to spend a day.
And you mentioning Tampa and St. Petersburg, and we haven't really said that they're not that far apart. They're either side of Tampa Bay.
Right, yep, right across the bay. And it's kind of a funny rivalry, and there's the bridges across, but we have the Tampa Bay Rays, and they're actually housed in St. Petersburg. So we're kind of known as the Tampa Bay area, but most people mention Tampa, and then most people, when they come on vacation, actually probably spend more time on the St. Petersburg and Pinellas County side. So it's a friendly rivalry of the area.
Okay. Where would you go next?
Well, there are so many different things to do up and down that beach kind of coast. So I'll mention a couple of neat areas that people might want to check out. There are, as I said, a bunch of parks. One of the beaches that consistently gets rated as a top beach is called Honeymoon Island. And that was, I guess, because of the weddings that used to take place there years ago. I got that nickname. But Honeymoon Island is just absolutely gorgeous. White sand, dunes. You can walk throughout there, kayak. And then also you can take a ferry over to Caladisi, which is kind of on the northern end of Clearwater Beach. So that's a great day out in nature. I mean, on the beach, but it's something a little bit different. And right in that area, that's just north of Clearwater Beach, there's a little town called Dunedin. And that's another area that has kind of the old Main Street kind of feel that a lot of downtowns are now revitalizing, where you can spend a day walking around shops and lots of good restaurants and some nightlife there. So that's also a fun area. And there's a lot of little towns like that kind of up and down the coast. The further south, there's a town called Gulfport, which has that same kind of feel. So there's a lot of little day trips that you can take to explore.
Assuming this is an area we're really going to want a rental car or our own car.
Yes, you're probably going to need one unless you're going to get transportation to one resort and stay there and really park yourself on the beach and just do the beach and spa thing. You're going to definitely want to have a rental car to explore.
Okay. And then in terms of times to go, your favorite time of year in the Tampa Bay area?
Definitely fall. You don't want to come during summers, as every Florida show warns. It's really too hot. And I mean, as a matter of fact, fall, really, we're getting into the time of year where it's temperate. October can still be very, very warm, but I think October and November are great. And the other thing in the fall is there are so many festivals that you could come, and even if you didn't hit any of the things that I've mentioned so far and you literally just went to some of the towns and got the paper to see what was going on, you could hit 2 or 3 festivals each day on the weekends.
And I'm assuming your snowbirds hit more like January after Christmas is past.
Yeah, and that's part of why I said fall instead of winter, because it's still a little less crowded.
Okay.
Now, January through March, I have friends who wanted to have their parents come down for a month, and they were struggling to find a short-term rental place to stay during the month of March, because that's really, and then there is a bit of spring break traffic, more family-oriented than the partying kind of thing, but there is some spring break traffic that makes March pretty hectic. So that's what makes fall fun. I mean, it's nice. You can still get some really warm weather, still very warm most of the time in October and November, but nice at night. And then there's so many things going on to do for specialty interests.
So your special festivals, it sounds like, are really kind of targeting the locals who live there, not even so much the snowbird traffic or the tourists or whatever, but it's the time of year that you kind of have Tampa to yourself.
Yeah, and it's such perfect weather that just everybody takes advantage of planning the different festivals. And there's everything from, last weekend would be a good example here. There was a big craft fair in my little town, all weekend. But there was also a big food and wine festival on Clearwater Beach. It was the first one they had, but a huge event on the beach with a tent and food and wine tastings from all over the area. So some things like that, they will advertise out of the area and kind of attract people in. There's also a big festival really close to us in Clearwater called the Clearwater Jazz Holiday, which takes place in the second weekend in October. And you probably wouldn't think of Clearwater for jazz either. Another surprise, but it's been going on about 30 years now. And we actually have a lot of out-of-town visitors that come in for the weekend just for that festival.
Okay. It seems like there's more to do than there used to be. I was reading that in 1924 that there was the largest shuffleboard club there. So there's a little more to do now than just shuffleboard.
Yes. It still has that reputation. St. Pete really did, because that was where the movie Cocoon was filmed.
Right.
And there was definitely that older reputation, and certainly is still an area that a lot of people retire to, and there's a lot of seniors here, but it's really diversified a lot over the years, I would say.
Now, the other thing we didn't talk about in terms of season is you also get some spring training for baseball fans.
Yes, and that's a wonderful thing to do. I think I mentioned to you, my husband and I travel around to all the baseball stadiums. It's one of our ways that we kind of plan out some trips during the year. And so obviously we're baseball fans, but I would say even if you're not a huge baseball fan, spring training is so fun. People do travel to it. It's a very friendly crowd. You get up close, and the weather is, again, usually outstanding for that. So there's actually... I think within, an hour or so drive around the Tampa Bay area, you could hit 5 or 6 different spring training fields.
Okay. Excellent. Food. So I'm assuming seafood, but what would you recommend? If I'm going down there and it's time to go out for dinner, where should I go?
Yes, seafood is definitely it. And the big thing that you probably shouldn't miss before you leave the Tampa Bay area is to have a good grouper sandwich. That's what the area is known for. And anywhere on the beach, there's some great little mom and pop kind of places. One place that is really well known for their grouper is there's a series of restaurants called Frenchies. And the big one that sits right out on Clearwater Beach is called Frenchie's Rockaway Grill. And that's where everybody watches the sunset, open air kind of restaurant. And they do their own fishing and catching of all their fresh seafood. So that's why it's so well known for the grouper. So that's a biggie. And the other one, if you're here most of the year, actually, from about October to I believe it goes until about March, is quite a long season for stone crab.
Okay.
And you hear about that in Miami a lot, but it's also very big here in this area, and that's one of my favorites. So definitely give stone crab a try, grouper sandwich. So, I mean, really lots of fresh seafood, and just sitting at some of the places on the beach and enjoying the fresh seafood is great. There's also one of the towns I didn't mention. If you go a little further north of Clearwater Beach, there's a town called Tarpon Springs, and that's actually has a very large Greek population. It was the home of the sponge docks where they did diving for sponges. There's a cute little tiny aquarium there. There's a history of the sponge docks, and then lots of little shops where you can buy sponges and all kinds of other souvenir type things. But some wonderful Greek food, wonderful, fresh fish, Greek style, and the famous Tarpon Springs Greek salad, which is what you would know as a Greek salad, but also with potato salad added to it. So it's the local twist. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah, and then there's also, it's actually the food scene, I guess, in the area is growing. There's kind of a little bit of everything here. And one thing that a lot of people, if they know the area, would know, so I don't want to neglect to mention it, there's a place in Tampa that's pretty famous called Burns Steakhouse. And what's neat about Burns is I'm actually not a huge steak person, but they do have good steak. But there's great steak restaurants just about everywhere now. So I wouldn't necessarily say you're going there because it's the best steak you're ever going to have. But you're going there for the experience. It's an old restaurant, very fancy service. And you can talk to your waiter, and your group can actually get a chance to tour the kitchen. And they take you through and they grow their herbs. So they show you that. They show you how the service and the waiters and the whole thing. And then they do a tour of their wine collection. Not the whole thing, because I think it's the largest private wine collection in the world. So, but they show you through the wine collection, talk about all the bottles that they have. And then afterwards, if you make a reservation, you can go up and they have a dessert room upstairs, which is just a neat experience. You have almost like a little private room for your party, and they have a huge dessert menu and dessert wines. And so it's just kind of an experience. It's a nice experience to go with the group and kind of have a unique experience there.
Okay. Sometime in the last couple of years, the day that made you say, thank God I live in the Tampa Bay area?
Well, the most recent one in memory is I mentioned the Food and Wine Festival. So I'll think of that day because we, started off the day biking from my house to our little downtown, which is a short bike ride. And you will see on a weekend everybody out here on bikes and walking. We actually have a trail called the Pinellas Trail, which goes the full length of this county. And so there are groups of bikers out every weekend. And so anyway, biked down to the craft festival, nice weather, walked around, then spent the afternoon at the Food and Wine Festival. It was actually almost a little too warm, but very nice to be able to say that this time of year, and enjoyed that. Saw a lot of people, even with a big crowd, saw a lot of people that we know because it's small enough here that it still has a small town feel in a way. And then came back to our little downtown for the evening where there's a great tapas restaurant, and went there and had a great meal, and just thought we're so lucky to have so much to do. It's a beautiful place, but there's also kind of everything that I could want to do.
You grew up elsewhere and you moved to the Tampa Bay area. How did you know you were a real resident of Tampa Bay?
Probably when you become snotty about the grouper sandwich and the seafood here. Although growing up in Maryland, we have our own seafood things. And then I guess complete intolerance of cold. Not,
Okay.
not being able to, and also realizing that in your wardrobe, you now have the same two sweaters that you had when you came here 10 years ago and no winter coat anymore. So,
Excellent. One warning you would give, other than bring sunscreen.
yeah, bring sunscreen probably. And then the other thing is really think about hurricane season if you are planning to come.
Right, sure.
Summer, of course, is the primary time. It does stretch all the way until November. And this area, the biggest time is actually towards the end of hurricane season. So I think September and October tend to be when it's the most active time. So just keep an eye out on that.
And I wanted to ask that because that was the time you were recommending we come.
Yeah, well, I think, later in October, November is probably safe, but September,
Yeah,
just
okay.
keep an eye out. If there's nothing forecasted, I wouldn't necessarily risk it if there's something on the horizon. And if you get here, of course, you can evacuate and get out, but there's bridges over and it's going to be a mess.
Sure,
So,
right.
that's just something to keep in mind.
Well, and if you're seeking high ground in Florida, I think that's Georgia, right?
Yes, exactly. And you and everybody else will be trying to get out and
Right.
won't make for a fun time.
One thing that makes you laugh and say only in the Tampa Bay area.
I'd probably have to say, and I haven't talked about our Gasparilla Festival, another festival, but there's actually a festival in Tampa, and it's basically the invasion of the pirate ship. Not really commemorating anything in particular,
Okay.
but just kind of a made-up festival. So another thing that's big in this area is just to have a festival for the sake of festivals. There's always a good excuse for a party. So a little New Orleans-esque in that way here. And the Gasparilla Festival is then a bunch of floats, big groups of crews, much like Mardi Gras, dressed as pirates and people clamoring for beads and all of that kind of stuff. So I'd have to say you have to laugh when you're in a huge crowd of people with a bunch of adults dressed as pirates on floats, and everyone is clamoring and fighting and doing everything they can to get beads.
And when does that take place?
That takes place in January. It's usually about the third week of January.
Okay.
Yeah. And that could be another warning. It could either be a good time to come if you want to experience it, and we've had people come into town just for that and really enjoyed it, or you could plan a different weekend if you want to avoid the crowds. And the hotels in Tampa, especially that weekend, will be crowded.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were wanting to do activities in downtown Tampa, it's not going to be your best weekend to do that, especially for more family friendly, and it gets a little rowdy.
Now, I don't remember you suggesting any activities in downtown Tampa.
I will mention a couple, though, because I talked a lot about the beaches. Mm-hmm. There is a great new Tampa Bay History Center. One of the things about the history of the Tampa area is it was known for the cigar factories. And so there's a bit of a Cuban heritage there, and in the Ybor City area, which has turned into more restaurants and kind of nightclubs. But if you go there, you can see some of the old buildings and old factories. And then the History Center gives a lot of that history and also has different kind of interactive and kid-friendly information about Tampa and history. And in that same vicinity, there is a very nice aquarium. So the Tampa Aquarium is great. And that's also where the cruise ships come and go from. So people that have been in on the cruise ships or left out of there will be familiar with that. And there's a little, it's called Channel Side area that has restaurants and that kind of thing right on the water. There's also a new art museum in Tampa. So there's several things to do in downtown Tampa as well. So I was suggesting more, not necessarily the best home base per se, but definitely worth going over and seeing some of those sites.
Excellent. Before we wrap this up, is there anything else that people should know before they go to the Tampa area?
Well, I will say in a timely fashion that the celebrity that we're most known for at the moment is Winter the Dolphin. I don't know if you've seen the dolphin.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was filmed right here, so it's kind of our current claim to fame. And Winter the Dolphin is housed, and that one activity I neglected to mention, but you probably would want to do it if you're coming into town, is to go to the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. And it's really a little gem. I actually hadn't been there until recently. recently, and it is a rescue aquarium. So you can see winter. It's, of course, much more crowded now than it used to
Yeah,
be.
I suppose it is.
But you can go online. They have a good website because they offer a whole bunch of different packages. I mean, you can just go to the aquarium, but you can also go when they're going to do a specific thing with the dolphin and do a picture with the dolphin. You can do a boat kind of cruise, wildlife cruise along with the aquarium. But they rescue, there's other dolphins there that have dolphins, turtles that have been victim to, boating accidents or other kinds of things from other animals and stuff. So they have a lot of interesting kind of plaques about their story, and then people that work there that will come around and explain and show Winter's prosthesis that helped with his tail. And, so it's a pretty interesting little gem here locally too. So that's something neat to check out as well.
Excellent. Last two questions, and these are coming. You really know you're in Tampa when what?
Probably you're eating a grouper sandwich on the waterfront, on the beach, and you're watching one of the most beautiful sunsets you've ever seen, truly competitive for anywhere in the world, I think. And the sun, right when it goes down and hits it, everyone breaks out into a cheer. Don't know why, but that's...
And if you had to summarize the Tampa Bay area in 3 words, what 3 words are you going to use?
Well, I'm going to have to say beachy.
Okay.
And I say beachy, beautiful beaches, but also there's definitely that beach laid back attitude and lifestyle here. So beachy. Since I've talked so much about festivals, I'll say festive.
Okay.
And diverse.
Excellent. And Shannon, where can people read more about both your travel writing or your hometown?
We do maintain a blog, my husband and I, about some of our travels, and it's twowhotravel.com. And we've been inspired to do some posts on the local area when we've been here locally, and then we also talk about many of the different places we visited as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on the show and telling us more about the Tampa Bay area.
Great, thank you. Glad to do it.
In news for the community this week, I did get an email from Crystal who said, just wanted to let you know that I have been downloading your podcasts from iTunes and I love them. Thank you so much for your show. It inspires my husband and I to travel. We live in Australia and are about to set out on an epic 12-month journey around this great country. We have a 4-wheel drive and a camper trailer, and we are leaving in January. Your shows are fantastic, and we wanted to let you know how much we appreciate them. Crystal, thank you so much for telling me. Over on the Facebook community, facebook.com/amateurtraveler, Jim commented on the Amateur Traveler episode 300, the Travel to Quebec episode, which has generated so many comments, and said one interesting thing about Montreal that was not mentioned in the podcast is at Place Jacques Cartier in Vielleport. There is a statue of Nelson, a British hero, but certainly not a French one. Nelson is looking off into the distance instead of at the Place and the St. Lawrence. They put him up facing the wrong way. And Jim, thank you for sharing that little bit of trivia. A while back, I heard from Carol Lee, who commented on the Lagos, Nigeria episode. I'm an American expat who's lived in Lagos for 5 years. I enjoyed this podcast and share David's enthusiasm for Lagos. I agree with him that markets are a great place to see the energy of Lagos. I enjoy Nigeria and Nigerians, but it is a very difficult place to visit because there are very real risks. I disagree with his assertion that it is a cheap place to visit. A visitor can get some cheap food cooked on the street, but I would hesitate to eat it because of hygienic concerns. There are good restaurants, but they are very expensive. Most groceries in the stores are about 3 times the price of the U.S. Hotels that are at Western standards are very expensive. For shopping, there is a good tourist market that the expats frequent on the Lekki Peninsula called Ilasan Lekki Market. You can find some great buys there. He didn't mention things to go see outside Lagos, but I would recommend a visit to Ozogbo, which has the Sacred Groves, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The textile artist Nike has a nice guest house there that she can arrange tours to artists and the sites there. They have an exciting Osun festival. We also had a fabulous trip to the north of the country to see the Durbars of Kano and Katsina. This is a medieval parade of knights that takes place in the Muslim Eid holidays. Nigeria is a country of many festivals, and being able to catch one of them is a real highlight. Nigeria is a feast for the eyes, but it's a very challenging place to visit as a tourist. Carol Lee, thanks so much for sharing your experiences in Nigeria. With that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. If you have any comments, feel free to do what these people have done and share them on either the Facebook community, facebook.com/amateurtraveler, where I'm still giving away things for free, or on the episode itself at amateurtraveler.com, or drop me an email to host@amateurtraveler. You can also follow me on Twitter at Chris2X. And as always, thanks so much for listening.
I got to see one more